Before we get started, just a quick note, spoiler alert.
And we are adults, and I will try very hard not to use adult language, but this is the warning.
Because I need to be an adult and not scream at a grown man who is whatever.
Just makes you want to shake him. Shake him.
Yeah, I do. I want to shake him and be like, bro, calm down. Have you never written in a journal? Well, maybe you have, and that's why you want to protect others from their thoughts because yours are crazy. But okay.
All right. Yeah.
Alrighty. Hello, and welcome back to Last Library on the Left. My name is Jennifer.
And I'm Sadina. We're a horror review and discussion podcast where we talk about horror in books, movies, and other formats, why we seek it out, and why we need it in our lives.
And today we're covering the Black Monday Murders, Volume 1 and 2. They were written by Jonathan Hickman and illustrated by Tom Coker.
Yeah, Coker, I believe.
Coker, okay. Volume 1 was released on January 31st, 2017. Volume 2 was released on April 24th, 2018. Both publishers are Image Comics. And just a quick note before we get started. I told you that I read this on ebook. Well, I switched between the two. And I think because I used it on my phone, the ebook version, I lost some of the magnificence that came with the book. You know what I mean? I feel like there were some times where like the full page wasn't shown because it couldn't fit on my phone screen. And I have a brand new phone, it's a big enough screen. So I highly recommend using the print copies because I did go back and forth between the print copies and the ebook just to see the type of experience that it was. And highly recommend the print copies. Just do yourself a favor and go with the print copy.
Yeah, they're a primarily black and white illustrated book, but with color to set moods and tones and things like that. Like I'm currently looking at a page where it's set in brown and gray tones. Coker, Garland, Wooten, and Abaddon, they knew. Wait a minute, that they tricked me. It's not Abaddon. That's I was like, wait, I know that name.
Yeah,
that's a god.
Yeah.
I'm so dumb. Okay, so Coker, Garland, and Wooten.
I mean, I'm glad that you have these moments every now and again because it brings you down to my level. And it's just...
Oh my God. Okay.
It's good times. It's good times.
Anyway, the illustrator, colorist, and typeset, they knew what they were doing, but it's definitely done for effect.
Yeah.
I will say, though, reading this for the first time, because the first one is called All Hail God Mammon, and I really thought that there was going to be a bit more of that horror aspect of it, you know, like...
Yes!
The gods behind the scenes and stuff, but they kind of felt like they were so in the background. I mean, granted, humans are the real monsters. We hit on this like all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a point where I was like, oh, this is just Lovecraft Country, but with Wall Street.
See, I went completely opposite. I went Game of Thrones season 8, where very quickly you realize it's not the supernatural that are the villains. It's the humans that are the villains. And so I was like, ugh, why are we so bad?
Girl, so terrible. And that's the thing too, is that I was reading it and I was like, okay, like I don't think that you have to sell this as horror to people when you understand that, like, so yeah, a lot of it is based around conspiracies of there's a larger plot driving the world and you know, puppeting the rest of us in our day-to-day lives. And to some extent I do believe that that is true. You know, there have been cases of subliminal messaging and commercials and branding, the ways with which our governments have manipulated populaces for whatever reasons. So to some extent I do believe that, but this is as if these people made contracts with gods and making that the horror aspect of it.
And I really, like you, I wanted more of the gods because I was like, okay, we're gonna get some mythology here, at least in the second book. I thought, because okay, the first volume I felt like for me it didn't start to make sense until closer to the end, where they were tying up all the loose ends and stuff and connecting the story. And so I was like, okay, second book for sure, we're getting the gods, we're getting the history behind the gods, because they had to give us a lot of history and background first volume. And then there were none, and I was like, but I want them, like I really want them.
Yeah, and even in the first volume, a lot of the talk of the gods is kind of in an abstract way. You find out that one of the people, it's an excerpt from her diary. And she's discussing, I'm going to the Fed today and I'm going to speak to Mammon, and like, maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe it'll be a mistake. And then the next entry was like, it was worth it. It was kind of still a mistake. But like, that's, you don't actually get to see Mammon until the second volume, but they talk about them. him.
Yeah, I forgot you see Mamona in the second one, but I still felt like I didn't get enough. You know what I mean? Like I felt like that
Yeah.
scene was so short that I wanted more, especially with the detective. I loved the detective.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to see his involvement go deeper because it seemed like he was about to go deeper in that second volume.
Yep.
Then they stopped it, and so like, where's the third volume? Because like I need more.
I know. I think that's the interesting thing is that the whole first volume sets up, you know,
Mhm.
the mystery of what has been happening behind the scenes. The second volume is playing out a little bit of how those plans have
Mhm.
come to fruition. But then the epilogue is like 2 pages long. Like that's what I'm ready for. Like you primed me for that, and now it's
Yeah.
over.
It's over. It's over. It was like so sudden. Okay.
And they did that with because like so many of the characters are garbage.
Yeah.
Garbage.
Yeah.
Terrible people, terrible motivations, terrible everything. And I have a couple of places where a quote stood out, you know, here or there. But the truly like interesting people and the truly interestingly motivated people,
Mm-hmm.
they don't come to fruition until the last few pages. And then that's all we get of them. And I was like, oh, why?
I know. So, okay, I read the first one and it took me a long time to get through the first one because I was just like, well, first I was going back and forth between ebook and print book, which I don't know why I chose to do that. I just wanted to see how it would work. And then I was like, oh, God. I wanted more of the detective in the first book and I wanted more of Rhea because I was like, she's badass.
Mhm.
And then I wasn't understanding the plot. Like it was going a little too over my head for a little bit. And so
Mm.
when I finally got it and I was in the second book, I was like, yes, I'm ready to go. I'm like ready. Then it ended. And I was like, oh, okay. There's no more. There's no more. Because don't get me wrong, there are a couple of chapters where like you're turning pages and there's 1 or 2 words. So I was like, I'm still turning pages and there's
Mhm.
nothing. And I'm like,
Yep.
why?
I know. And that's the thing too, is that you get all like geared up for this like really
Mhm.
great payoff, and then it's so short. But all of those other elements building up to it are meant to be horrific looks at what people go to.
Yeah.
And I will say the very first note I put in, and I think I even texted you about this because I was
Yeah.
like, "Ugh, I hate that.
Yeah.
It just, I was like, oh, I get it, but I hate that I get it. So one of the very first terrible people, you find out he's the murderer and he's being reprimanded. So the gist of it is that there's schools of thought on how to build and control world economies.
Yeah.
And we're currently following the joined East and West schools.
Mhm.
And this guy, he's being reprimanded because he's a professor, and one of the other people that sits on the board are like, why are you telling these kids these things? Like they're not
Yeah.
ready, and da-da-da. And he's like, don't you think that you gave too much truth? And the gentleman says, if the truth would kill a man, then that man must die. I was like, okay, hear me out. I get why it's bad. I
Yeah.
do. But there's a certain part of me, it reminds me of that saying that like as you get older and you heal, you can start to let go of those parts of you that you created
Yeah.
to survive. And I still have some parts of me that I have not fully healed and been able to
Yeah.
let go of. And some of those parts are parts that like, okay, I that's a big, I don't know if I'm okay. So I had a really hard time in middle school. I hit puberty really hard, but with it
Right.
came a lot of emotional instability because of
Mhm.
my father's side.
Yeah.
And I would be so filled with legitimate murderous intent, and I didn't know why. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
understand why small things would set me off, and I'd be like, well, I can just kill them, it'll be fine. And then I'd be like, what am I thinking? Like that's
Yeah.
not how I was raised. I would go home and I would just cry on the floor in the dark for hours until my
Yeah.
mom came home, and she had no clue how to help me. So like I tried to opt out when I was
Yeah.
in 7th grade, and it didn't work. And I was like, well, I'm too lazy to try again.
I mean, thank you for being too lazy to try again.
You're welcome. But I was also really mad that like I couldn't even do that right. And at the time,
Yeah.
my grandfather was like really cruel, and he made me feel even less than I was already feeling already.
Yeah.
And after that failed attempt, I remember being at school the next morning and being so sick to my stomach because
Mhm.
it hadn't worked and I was nauseous and everything. I'd thrown everything up and I was so miserable. And I was like, man, these people like
Yeah.
that think that I can't do anything right in life. And I was like, I'm going to start working to do everything right in life. I
Mhm.
don't want to live for me anymore or anyone else. I'm going to live for spite. Like, fuck these people. And I lived, like, I created this like really hard,
Yeah.
fiery piece of me that was just
Yeah.
living to fight and outlive other people that I hated.
Yeah.
And that was hard to let go of. It's really hard to heal. And so to hear this guy be like, look, man, if the truth is going to kill someone, they deserve to die. And I was like, yeah, fuck those people. If they can't handle it, they don't need to be here. So
it's so funny because you still have some of that hardness in you every now. Like
yeah.
I never personally see it. You never directed towards me, but I'm just like, I would hate to be on that end of it. Like,
I've had people say that to me before.
Yeah.
M has witnessed quite a bit of hardness directed at other people.
Yeah.
And this one time I think we were driving to WGBH for our internship, and she was like, please God, let me know if I ever get close to making you that mad, because I would hate to have that directed at me.
I mean, same. Like, y'all, Sadida is so chill with me being single mom, doing all the schoolwork. Like, Sadida, like, I just can't come to your house. Like, we've got to do this over Zoom just because, like, I have so much going on. And that's physically, mentally, task wise, because I'm learning to say no. But we have this problem where we have to overwork ourselves because we know we can do it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. So, but again, you've been so chill. Like, I can just like throw anything at you. You're just like, yeah, fine. We'll figure it out. I'm like, okay. Like, I just spent like 10, 15 minutes spiraling just to, it's okay. No, I mean, it's just my own personal thing. So, like, yeah, I would hate to be on that end of it. I mean, I agree with M wholeheartedly. Like, let me know. And I'll send you some chocolates and some wine and we'll be cool.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that even like talking about that time makes me like really nervous and like shake, and kind of at like episode 19 where like there's that part of my healing that is not complete. And so to kind of poke that still kind of like terrible raw piece of my history like hurts.
Yeah.
And so when I came across that line, I like actually put it down. It's like 5 pages in. And I put it down.
So early on.
And I was like, ugh, why did I choose this?
That's one thing about this podcast. It has become a way for us to like really like get introspective with ourselves and like just like you said, poke at those little squares in our body, like, oh, you didn't know I was there. Here you go. Look at me now.
You remember how like I exist and you've just been ignoring me and like repressing me for so many years? I'm still here, still festering.
Hi.
Like, oh God.
Hey, bestie. Like,
right. Jeez, now I have to like look at you again and deal with you.
Yeah.
I don't got that kind of time.
No, we're trying to do a podcast here. We don't have time to like introspect.
Yeah, I did. I marked that quote down and was like, I hate that I get it. I hate that I get where it's coming from, especially from that character. Girl, I fucking hate that character.
Dude,
he's trash.
I hate that character, but I also loved how much I hated that character. I don't even know his name. I didn't write it down, but man, he was a good villain.
I think it was Victor, because he was the
Russian
Victor one.
Victor, yeah, Victor with a K. Because I kept thinking Victor Crumb, and I was like, he was good to hate. I just, ooh.
Yeah. So in book 2, they alluded to his brush with insanity and like what caused him to spiral out when we see him in book 1. You kind of understand. You kind of like empathize because he lost someone, but that's the whole point of their system.
Exactly.
Their system is supposed to so like they have like 5 seats or whatever, and their system is meant to sacrifice someone in a certain position of power on a cycle so that Mammon is satisfied, so that their wealth grows, and everything is planned out and plotted. They agree to it.
Yeah.
And part of their whole thing is there's the price you pay, the price you owe, and then like the price like, when it evens out. And that cycle took someone from him, and he didn't want to pay that price. No. And so he started planning on how to bring down the system. Ironically, at the same time that someone else in another family was also planning to bring down the system, but hers worked, which is why she's badass.
Rhea was total badass. She knew from the I don't want to say she knew from the very beginning, but she knew early on what she was doing. So she had longer to plan it, I feel. And then we find out that Rhea was also excommunicated from the group because she's a twin. And so I feel like her not being involved with the group helped her plan, whereas Victor was a crime of passion versus hers cold calculated murder, right?
Well, and she had the familiar on her side.
Yeah.
Which you never really figure out what the familiars are. They're some type of vampire, because and there's 4 of them at least. She's got one, the Mahai, I think is what they were called. The ones from India have one, and there's 2 that sit with Maman.
Yeah. There's the civil one. Oh yeah, I forgot that the Indians have one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. I saw in the summary it said vampire. Let me see what it said. A secret world where vampire Russian, this pronunciation is gonna get me.
Oh,
Oligarch?
oligarch.
Oligarch?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's what they are.
Which
Well,
is interesting because, like, why would the familiar then be with them and not Victor?
oh yeah, that makes sense.
Because
But it seemed like Victor was one. Like if it seemed like he was turning into one almost.
Yes. So after whatever that woman's name was that died, that set him off, he disappeared from the board for like 2 years or something,
Yeah.
according to the records. And when he came back, they were like, he's different, he's changed, and there's something different. But he also, her familiar controlled with one eye and he controlled with the other. I think he took something from her familiar.
Oh yeah.
Which
That's
makes sense because her
interesting.
familiar looked real pleased to kill him.
Yeah, she did. Man, her familiar was again very badass.
Yeah.
I was like, you're scaring me a little bit.
Also, do you think that they were having sex? Because
Yes!
there was a point where I was like, am I supposed to read in this scene what I think I'm supposed to read?
That's when I read into it because I was like,
okay.
And it's funny because because there's a part where the familiar seems to be going down on Rhea, and I was like thinking up to this point, I was like, oh, there hasn't been any sex yet, and I was like, wait a minute. And I was like, oh, well, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how I felt about because like the familiar has been with her family for a long time, and it just was a little weird.
The only reason I thought it was there was to show that they have a really strong bond.
Yes, that clearly the familiar was on her side.
Yeah. And so that was the one edging factor that she had over Victor because she had that extra leverage with the familiar. I don't know. That was my take on it. But
yeah,
I was like, okay, let's see what you did there.
Yeah. You know, though, I'm surprised because you learn in the second volume that Maman orchestrates the financial crashes around the world in order to feed on like the suffering and to help build the wealth of the people sitting on the boards.
Yep.
And there's this professor and he's begging for favors for Maman, and one of them is, tell me how many of the financial crashes you've been responsible for. And so Maman starts answering them and he skips 1987, and then the professor's like, oh my god, I knew it, 1987 was orchestrated outside of Maman's control, and he starts like, he's so elated while dying. And there's another scene where the board is meeting in this like subspace, I think they call it idea space, and they're talking about the triggering a crash, but that you won't feel the effects for a few years. And I was like, that's the one, that's where they did it, because Maman was complaining about a group of his students, I guess, acting outside of his view. Although I gotta say, Maman is like super chill for all this. Like he does not.
Let's talk about that for a little bit, because when they have this meeting with Maman, the detective and the professor, and they're talking to Maman, and the familiars and Maman are talking about how there are times when they can't see, like physically see what these people are doing. I was like, no, that's a huge no for me. Like, how is it that you're all powerful, all knowing, I would assume, and you can't see them?
Well, and Maman even admits to not being a big god. He's like, there's older gods than me, and basically Maman is like, nah, I just set this up because humans are greedy. Like their schools please me, and like their greed pleases me, so yeah, I let them do whatever they want. But like to think that he's aware that there's a group of them working behind closed doors and he's not angry about it was like kind of shocking.
Because I just kept thinking, like, if it's happened once, why are you not thinking that it's not going to happen again? Like, doesn't that make you just as naive as the rest of us who are being controlled?
Right.
You know, because the humans have one on you. Like, I don't know.
It might even be that they are going to get away with it, because Rhea is very clearly, so Rhea and her twin brother Daniel's the one who gets murdered in the first book. When they're young, their grandfather basically like kills their parents and hates them because he thinks that marrying outside of the board or whatever was gonna take them, and whatever. And so the grandfather up front tells her, like, I killed your parents, and in order to retain power in the system, it's best to eat your own. And he leaves, and so she makes a promise with her twin that they'll never hurt each other. And I think that's when she starts planning, like, this is how we're going to bring down the system. And they get caught and da da da, and things fall apart. But like, clearly, she doesn't give up on trying to break the system. And neither does Daniel, her brother,
Yeah.
because he hires, what was his name? Dane.
Dane. Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, I think that Dane and Daniel were together.
I think
Because
so.
they made a comment offhand about how they were like, well, we have to bring back the exiled sister now because Daniel never had kids. And that's what he gets for trading in cock or whatever it was they said.
Yes.
Yeah.
They had a throwaway comment. I was like, I caught what you said there.
Yeah. So making a homophobic comment.
Yeah.
Hopefully it was just about that and not like sex trade. I was like, I'm just gonna, because he sounds like he was probably a good dude at the end.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Right?
I'm
I'm
gonna
just
go with
gonna-
you on there. Yeah, we're gonna yeah.
Because you
Strictly
find out
homophobic.
that he and Dane have been working together to try to
Mhm.
bring down the system, and that another person on the board was working with the exiled sister in Europe, and they were going back and forth, but then things started to fall apart and Daniel gets killed by Victor and the sister comes back.
Mhm.
But then she like welcomes in Dane into her new future
Yeah.
to break the system, and she welcomes in the detective. How badass was that story going to be?
I'm I'm telling you, it was gonna be epically just one of the best. I put it to the same height because I told Sadina off air, Rhea gave me full on Vivian from Darkest Night vibes. And I don't care
Mhm.
what anyone says, that last episode of
Yes.
Darkest Night, first season, when Vivian comes in and she takes care of everyone one by one, I was expecting it to be as magnificent as that last episode. And I didn't get it, but I'm sad.
I know. Because like now Rhea has everything. She has a familiar by her side that she is in some form of partnership with.
Yeah.
She has Dane. She
Yep.
has, I think it was Detective Dumas.
I think so.
And
And she's taken in Victor's house at this
yeah.
point.
Yeah, she absorbed Victor's house. So
Yeah.
and I think Victor was the representative for the Eastern school.
That's right, he was.
So the Western school has absorbed the Eastern school, but she's out
Yeah.
to break the Western school.
Yeah.
And there was like some takeaway stuff where like there were some rumors that while she was in exile, she was working with other schools.
Yeah.
Like, that's the story I want. I would watch them like
Yes!
burn down the system, you know?
I was waiting. I was like, because I kept thinking of so many different like shows and movies like running through my head. And I kept thinking, like, this is the end of Cabin in the Woods where the hand comes down
Mhm.
and they reset. And I was like, she's about to reset this world.
Yep.
And then the epilogue happened, and I was like, all right.
Such a
And I don't know
bummer.
why. I really thought there was a third one coming. I told Sadina off air, I was like, yeah, I was looking for a third one, but no, it was just the third comic before it was released into volumes like we have. So
Mhm.
it was just disappointing because I was really hoping for a big old showdown.
I mean, how good would that? And that's the other thing too, is that if she doesn't even really have to be afraid of Maman, then like she can
Right.
break the system. And it kind of sounds like Maman, because he has all the other schools around the world, he'd probably let her break the system as long as she built a new one.
Yeah. There was so much potential towards the end for another one, which if there is ever another one, I will read it because loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that the kill scenes were superb. Chef's kiss. I loved them. They were not too gory, but gory enough to get the point across. I love Daniel's death scene. When you come across his dead body, I was like, whoa, that's very scary. It was very good. My favorite kill scene was when Victor killed the lawyer in the interview room.
That was a little intense.
It was really intense.
Because I really thought that he was going to let him stop, because he said, stop when I tell you to.
Yeah.
But no, he just let him like.
Yeah. And he's just talking the whole
Okay.
time to Dumas. Just, this is what I'm telling you. And this guy's just thunking his head on the table. And it was really, really, really intense for a graphic novel. One of the more intense death scenes that I've seen in a while. Really, really enjoyed it. Which don't interpret that any other way.
Yeah. Remember, guys, she's campy and
Yeah.
like likes all the blood gore stuff.
Yeah.
So like it's not as scary as it sounds.
Yeah, it's not as scary as it sounds like. It's really not. I'm not scary. And like I said, I loved the detective. I needed more of him. He was just so fun. And I wish that they had expanded more